right, welcome everybody back into the One Tree Forest with Scott Johnson. I am joined today by my guest and great friend Zack Nichols. He has agreed to talk to us, tell us some cool things. He's had some unique experiences over his life, and I was really curious to dig a little bit deeper on some of them and just kind of find out a little bit more about Zack. Zack's been a musician, an elite skier, and now really successful businessman. So I kind of want to pick his brain on some things. The first question: What was it like to play at Red Rocks?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. First of all, thanks for letting me into the forest. It's good. It's going to be fun to hang out and chat with you. Um, yeah, I think Red Rocks was incredible. It was an experience like no other for me. I think what's cool. So I'm in my music room right now, and I've got a bunch of posters on the wall. I was just thinking about it when I came down here earlier. This poster kind of over my shoulder here is Johnny Lang and Buddy Guy when they played at Red Rocks like in the mid '90s. I remember going with my dad and just thinking like one day I'm going to do that. And sure enough, 20 years later or so, I was fortunate enough to do it. And I did that with one of my best friends growing up was my bassist and guitar player at the time. So yeah, just an unreal experience. Very cool.
Awesome. Okay, here's one. What did you do after that? Like, you're like, yes, I had this moment. What did you do after? Did you go to a party? Like, what, was it just
It
girls
was
and
weird,
champagne
like,
everywhere? This is what I imagine, but I know that's, yeah, I just kidding.
yeah, that's not really folk music. That's not what we did. Um,
I just
you
kidding.
know, it wasn't hairband style parties afterwards. No, it was weird. It was a weird experience because I remember going out onto the stage. I remember that vividly, and then I kind of blacked out for 45 minutes.
Really?
Like I don't really remember much of the show,
Okay.
which is interesting. And then some of my bandmates had similar experiences. But we all walked off. We went into the green room. It's a really cool environment there. It's like built into the rocks. Everybody's been, anybody who's anybody has played there. And so you're sitting in this green room, just like, what did we just do? We just achieved our dreams, like in our mid 20s. Now what do we do? So
Wow.
that was definitely kind of a surreal moment. All of us just sat in there like silent for probably an hour or so. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a weird experience because it is such a monumental moment in your life that you don't really know what to do. But yeah, we went out to bars and had fun afterwards for sure.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
yeah.
I'm glad. Ethan Wrong Way. I was listening to that the other day. Is that anybody else's favorite? Ethan Wrong Way?
That's usually people. That's what most people say, actually. And it's kind of funny to me because I haven't played music professionally in a really long time. But I don't know, just that album is so old at this point for me that it's kind of funny to go back every now and then. I'll go back and listen to it too. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that song.
Yeah, it's
Um,
2008, right?
but yeah, no, that's cool. And it's
2009.
really cool when I have like friends or family that, have their favorite song that I wrote. It's kind of a fun experience.
Yeah. That line, sleeping on I was sleeping on the streets of LA. Like I don't it just I very briefly, between when I was getting out of the Marine Corps and needing to move home, my apartment lease didn't line up, and so I slept a couple nights in my Jeep on the beach in San Diego. It makes me a little nostalgic for just being a young man with just like, it's like, yeah, I'll just sleep here tonight. You know?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
remember those days, right? Like, could
yeah.
could you do that now? 20 years later, could you even imagine that?
No, yeah. The worst I did was I went to a bachelor party. Oh God, that had to have been 10 years ago. We started the bachelor party at a bowling alley. I don't know what part of Denver, not terrible, but like not the best part of Denver. And I could not, I could not drive home for sure, and I just slept in the back of the truck. I woke up I was like, oh, all right, I didn't get robbed, thank God. Where it's just like in just like
Let's
a
get out of here.
weird bowling alley parking lot. There's like people scuttling by with their shopping carts full of whatever, and they weren't full of groceries. I will say that.
It, yeah, yeah. No.
Yeah,
You're not grocery shopping at 3 in the morning at a King Super.
yeah. But okay, so you go out so you have that moment. It's 45 minutes. You kind of black out, and then how long until you start thinking, yeah, what's next? Because a lot of people don't get to having a moment like that ever, right? Like you're with your childhood friend, you get to you play Red Rocks, right? Like how does that? How long does that last before you're thinking like, what's next?
Personally, and I think a lot of people are like this, I'm always looking for that next achievement. So for me, it was like next day you go, okay, what's next? How am I going to do that again? Or how am I going to get to that next step again? That was kind of a weird point in my life, though, in that like 2 weeks later, I moved to London to go to school for a semester. So I had this great momentum in the Colorado music scene that I just kind of pushed to the side and then moved to a different country. And so I tried to leverage that a little bit, and I, played some shows while I was out there. We had like a fall break midway through the semester, and I went to 6 or 7 different countries, brought my guitar, played shows at all of those little countries like coffee shops and things like that, just to kind of keep things going and see if I could keep the ball rolling. So that was my next step into it a little bit. And after I got back to Denver, kind of continued that Denver music scene for a bit while I finished up school, and ultimately moved out to LA and kind of tried the thing out there for a bit.
Wow, yeah, nice. Yeah, that's really cool. That's another thing I was going to ask you about. If you're good at two things or several things, how do you choose which one you're going to pursue for a while? Like, I'm just always curious how people just arrive where they're at.
No, it's a great question. It is an interesting thing to think about how everybody lands where they're at. I think a lot of people, when you're growing up as a kid, you're not deciding to get into whatever you ultimately get into as a career. For skiing, I feel like I've always been a pretty self-aware person. And so like with skiing, I was good. I mean, I was on the Colorado ski team, was kind of on that path to the next step to like the FIS racing and the USSA sort of or USA uh, ski path. And but I wasn't like the next tier up. I was never going to be the best of the best,
Okay.
And so for me, I felt like, okay, I've done it. I enjoy it, but it's kind of lost its luster a little bit for me. So time to move on, go to college, see what I can make of it. With music, it was somewhat similar. Once I moved out to LA, I was traveling around doing tours quite a bit, and I found that I liked the business side of the music business more, or at least not even that I liked it more. I felt like I was maybe better at it. I would have, these long experiences of writer's block, and all these people around me who are musician friends of mine, they were just churning out great music. And I was just sitting around like, wait, I can't seem to get that next song out. But I
Yeah.
would be great at routing a whole tour and financing it and figuring out how to do all of that stuff. And so I decided to go to grad school. I found myself in grad school a couple of years into it, and um, you know, got a degree in finance and never looked back.
That's awesome. So it's
So
just
kind of,
go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of a quick turn, frankly. Like I remember I finished a tour, and like 2 weeks later I started grad school. And it was just this very quick switch in my head of like, all right, gotta shut that down and like go on a different path suddenly.
Wow.
It just it felt natural to me to
Natural.
get into business. I think more than grinding it out on the music scene. And then there's it's such a crapshoot. You have no idea exactly how that's gonna shake out. But if you get into business, you kind of have a pretty definitive path on where that goes. So
Yeah. That's nice. Yeah. Yeah. It's a bit like writing a book, but except for like when you write a book, it's like it's a virtual guarantee that it won't be successful. So at least you don't have to like ever get your hopes too high.
very similar to music. If what your finished product is something that you can really stand behind and be proud of, then it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. Being able to just point to something that you created is fantastic. So
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, love the book.
Thanks,
I'm a
man.
huge.
That's
I
awesome.
just I ripped right through it and got towards the end, and I was like, wait a second, I got to slow down. I'm enjoying this too much. I don't want to finish it.
I appreciate that. Well, you're an elite club of people who've read it and enjoyed it. It's funny because the people who enjoyed it were the people that I imagined enjoying it. You know what I mean? Like, or enjoyed it the most, or the people I was like, if I had to bet ahead of time, I kind of called it. I really thought you'd enjoy it, and I'm so glad I was. That's the main thing. I'm just glad that I was correct. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it was wonderful. I've told everybody about it, so it's the word's spreading.
Nice, dude. Awesome. All right. I appreciate that. I was going to talk to you, also about a lot of the book takes place in Silverton, and we've actually been there together. Had a little adventure, a little, I guess, I don't know. Do we call that a misadventure? Because we still had a good time, but everything just like the deck was stacked against us. Things just kind of kept going wrong along the way, right? Like you were there. It
Yeah, it
was
was a
when the
rocky start.
it was a rocky start. I'll set the stage, and I'm kind of curious, like how the experience was from your perspective, because I know that I really like planning little adventures like that. It's one of my favorite things to do. But like they almost invariably contain some sort of something very stupid happens, or something goes wrong, or there's always some sort of adversity. We drove all the way from Denver and I started to pack into a lake like same day, and we stopped in Gunnison for lunch, and I decided to go to a liquor store with our other friend Taylor and pick up a bottle of scotch. It was not a bad bottle of scotch. Anyway, so I'm driving back. I'm pretty happy. We're on time. Everything's going great. I'm with my friends. We're driving up to the mountains, right? And then, and this guy, I start to pull into a parking spot to come back because we'd left you at lunch, and this guy starts backing up. Um, and I just lay on the horn, and he just never heard. I think he was like basically deaf, and he never heard anything. He was an older gentleman, real nice, hell of a nice guy. But like, and he just back up, and I couldn't go back because there were cars. Just the way the street was set up, there were cars behind me, and just watched him just crunch my bumper in the front. And I mean, it wasn't crunch, but it had a pretty solid dent in it. And I was just like, and and so the first thing he does is offer me $60 for a whole new bumper. I was like, that's not gonna cut it. So I was like, all right. I was like, do you have an insurance card? Like, can we exchange? And they're like, didn't have that. So we call, like had to have the police, had to wait for the cops to come there, file a report, do everything. Cause, I mean, he did seem like a nice enough guy, but I mean, he looked like the type of guy who's going to drive straight up in the mountains and just forget about it. So anyway, we waited around, and then we finally get there like super late, start packing in, and we get, what is 100 yards into the trip, and just a waterfall washed out our trail. And it had to have been like a half-mile detour to go down and around, and all the while the sun's going down. We started to.
I'm going to stop you there for a second, actually,
Please.
because that waterfall, I remember when we were planning the trip, I said, hey, like it was my first real backpacking sort of trip, my wife's as well. And so we're trying to get the lay of the land. What do we need? What do we don't need? All that. And you said, yeah, just bring some shoes that can get wet. There's like this little creek. We could probably hop over it, but just in case, you might want to have some shoes. Maybe we'll just even like drop them on the other side of the creek, and then we'll get them on the way out. And so when we walk up 100 yards into our hike, we see this waterfall that's, I mean, the pool that we would have to cross was probably 8 or 10 feet deep. And then on the other side is like a 50-foot cliff.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I had that. Some of that inspired some of the book, because that year. Do you remember the avalanches they had a 700% snowpack in the San Juans that year. They get a ton of snow already. I mean, like it's not unusual to get like, what do they typically get? Something like 300 to 400 inches of snow or something in
Yeah,
in some
it's
of
a
those
lot.
San Juan mountain areas. And then they got 700%, so they got like 3,000 inches of snow. And like, so like there was an avalanche, and I mentioned this in the book too. Again, like there was an avalanche that was so powerful it changed the course of a river. With all that's to say, I don't know why it didn't occur to me that this tiny little stream that would be, was going to turn into just a raging river waterfall, like with it cascading over the edge of the cliff. So we didn't even I think we hiked in like 3/4 of them. We were going to hike 3 miles in, stay in this beautiful valley that looks like something out of Lord of the Rings. I mean, we did get there ultimately, but like we were gonna camp in this most beautiful place, and I mean, it was pretty, but like we just found a spot that was flat in the middle of the forest, and that was it.
Yep.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
do remember going up that next day, and 3/4 of the way up there just laughing. Like there's no way we were going to get all the way up here that day. Under the best case scenario, we wouldn't have
No,
gotten
no,
all
it
the
was
way up.
never gonna happen.
With first timers, you're thinking on your playing field, not with, 6 people in tow.
Yeah, it was a lofty goal to drive from Denver and then start the backpacking. And once it's like a 7-hour drive. Well, whatever.
Yeah.
We made it. We made it back alive. One of the coolest views I thought when we got up to, I forget the name of the lake. It doesn't really matter, but like just looking west over the Waymanuke wilderness, and it's just like, I mean, it's like a 500,000 acres of just everything. It looks like everything is above tree line. So it's just like this whole crazy world of just mountains off in the distance, and you're just kind of in it. And that trip and some other ones that I'd done packing around there just like really helped inspire us. The scene where they buy their cabin, I imagine in my mind is very, very close to that spot. So they all kind of paid off, I guess. My mountain misadventures have paid off, at least as fuel for some of the writing.
Yeah, I had a good time in those parts of the book because I was envisioning, the four-wheeler trail that we went up. I kind of thought that's where, their cabin would be, somewhere around that area. So
But yeah, yeah. Oh, did you have a favorite part of the book? For the person who wrote the book to ask you that question is almost ridiculous.
I
But
like the question because
let's hear it.
like I said, I think the book's great. I loved so much of it. I would say that the chapter, is it called The Big Empty?
Big empty. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like that scene where they're in the lecture hall and just that dynamic between that conversation between the classmates, I think is something that you just start to understand Tim a lot better. And just like who he is as a person, kind of it comes out because of all of these experiences that he's kind of had. And I think, I don't know, you just learn about him a little bit more from a character depth standpoint. And, you know, a lot of us have probably had similar types of conversations. Hopefully not up to that extent, but similar types of conversations when you get into college and you're, trying to figure out how to live and communicate with so many different people that you've never experienced before. So it was a cool chapter.
One of the most difficult things actually in writing the whole book was what order do I put things in? How do I effectively just like flash back? So I'm glad that hit, because that was supposed to be the part of the book where you start to like you understand him and then you understand his character arc. And so I'm glad that landed. Um
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
you've got to Tarantino it a little bit. You can't go chronological all the time.
You can't go
You gotta you
chronological.
gotta bring it
No,
back.
yeah. Big Empty is kind of where it starts. Like you start to be like, oh, okay, like where is this guy actually going? Like, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Like, is he gonna break good? Is he gonna be bad? Like, what is he gonna do? Once he gets to the kind of the bottom of his, sort of journey into his own, I guess, personalized hell. And it's like, all right, well, what's he gonna find there? And then Big Empty kind of set the stage for how does a Tim Ellingwood come about? Yeah, so he was like a
Well,
very
I've
fun
got to
thought
ask.
experiment.
Yeah, I've got to ask you a little bit then.
Yeah, please.
What characters do you feel like you drew from personally or from people that you know the most?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. Tim, I mean, there's a lot of me and Tim. I mean, just for sure. I think Tim was a thought experiment in just like if I completely went one direction, you know what I mean? I think that was a bit, yeah, like it's an imaginable version of a direction maybe I could have chosen to take. It's pieces, right? Like none of these characters are like nobody's actually based off of anybody. Case in point. So Hal was I noticed after I wrote it how much of my grandfather was in Hal. My grandpa Carl was fucking awesome, right? Like I loved my grandpa Carl. And then once I read it back, I started thinking about stories like him having his 38 in his ankle holster, like that story 100%. Like that one I know comes from my brother and I were 8 years old. We're driving through Denver, another not great neighborhood in Denver, but my grandpa would take us out to dinner every once in a while. It was like a special thing. He'd take us out, and we were like driving in his truck. He had this pickup truck that it actually said rough and ready across the there was like a rock guard that said rough and ready across the front. I just loved that truck, and it had a bench seat. And so me and my brother, like, and my grandpa are sitting there, and we're driving. My brother goes, that guy's got a gun. And my grandpa just kind of casually just goes, yeah, mine's under the seat. He was on the island hopping campaign in World War II. And the guy, it wasn't like the guy had like in a holster or something, like just do an open carry or anything like that. The guy was walking, holding it in his hand, going to do God knows what. And we just drove to dinner like nothing happened. And I was like, all right, I guess grandpa has this. I guess he's got it covered.
He's got.
Yeah. So yeah, it was, so anyway, so that got in there, but but there's also plenty of things that are just like not him too, right? And none of his backstories, those came from some other things. Like him getting stuck and him having the reaction he had with his brother came from, all right, at my first deployment when I wasn't flying, 16-hour day, like we didn't have that much like fuck off time, right? But like at one point there was a guy and he was a cool guy, fell asleep. We had a cot set up because, he just wasn't like he fell asleep on the job, but he was resting because we were working so hard. He's sleeping on a cot. And this other guy gets this idea and he's like, let's hold him down. We're each going to grab a corner of his blanket and hold it down. And like, just so he would wake up and not be able to move. And that was the whole prank. We weren't going to do anything beyond that. So very not a cool thing to do to somebody, but also, I mean, as Marine Corps pranks go, pretty tame. And so he woke up, he freaked out, and he got up, and there was 4 of us, and 3 of us were jacked, and one of them was not, like a small guy. And this guy, this guy knew how to fight, but there was also like 4 of us, and he didn't swing, but he was the way we couldn't hold him down at all. Like it was like this thing happened. He just like got up, and he looked at me, and it was like looking in the face of a grizzly bear. I was like, this thing wants to, it wants to kill me. And it absolutely had no doubt in my mind. He could have fucking killed all 4 of us in the moment because he was just so like, he was in this fight or flight. And come to find out, when he was a kid, his brother and some of his friends had shoved him in a sleeping bag and then thrown it into a swimming pool. And he had to fight his way out of the sleeping bag, like, and nobody helped him. And so basically his brother almost accidentally murdered him. And it made, in my mind, something clicked of just like, oh, there's like a whole nother level. Like when somebody has this visceral reaction, it's like, you don't want to be anywhere, like you don't want to be the person who is on the receiving end of what's about to come. And then I put that into Hal, in that opening scene in Portland. And it was just like, yeah, so that's kind of how that all kind of came to pass.
Well, that's cool that you've layered all of that type of stuff into those characters.
Big Empty goes into creative destruction's probably my favorite. Big Empty's right up there though. Like that, yeah, the college scene, so tough. And I was like, do I want to choose this subject and the subject that shall not be named, right? And I was just like, but that's what happens in college. You know what I mean? Like it's like people get heated. This is realistic. And so, yeah, that's a good, I'm super glad you liked it. Well, I know it's Easter Sunday. So thanks for doing this on a holiday.
No, like I said, I'm honored you asked, and this has been fun chatting about all this stuff.
Yeah, man, it's been great, chatting, and yeah, I guess we'll see you soon. We got some hang time planned. I can't wait.
I know, I'm excited for it too. It's going to be good.
Awesome, dude. All right. Well, with that, I guess we are out of the One Tree Forest with our guest, Zack Nichols. Thanks, brother.